Hello, hello. I'm Dr. Nazanin Moali, and today we're going to get a sneak peek of the conversation we will have with Amy Taylor. She's a model, sex educator, and sex worker. And in today's conversation, she's going to tell us about her experience of being a sex worker, some of the feedback that she got, some of the kind of compliments she received. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I see Amy is joining. Amy, if you put a request to join, we can start. We're very excited about this conversation. Some of you guys sent your questions via Instagram story. If you have a question, you can put it down below. That would be great. Hi, Amy. I think there's an option for request to join the live. I haven't seen it yet. Let me double check. And then that way we can have you on. Put down your questions in the comments so we can see that, and that would be awesome. So today we're going to talk about sex work. We're going to do a mini series on sex work. One of my colleagues, she works with sex workers. She's going to talk about her experience, and she's an ex-sex worker herself. So we can kind of have a conversation about everything sex work related. Also, we are doing a new series on sexual skills. So if you guys have a request, let's see, let us know. Amy, I invited you to join as well. I invited you again. Let's see if it works this time. Yeah, it's like Instagram stories, like Instagram lives at times can be challenging. Huh. So unable to join. Let's see. Let me try again. Thank you everyone for your patience. Let's see. Invite. I put another invite. I don't know what's happening that it doesn't allow you to join. I invited you guys, invited you, Amy, again. All right, so you guys have any questions, any feedback about show, about our podcast, let us know. Currently, we're doing a series on male sexual health, so like erectile dysfunction, delayed orgasm. So let us know if you've been listening and you're finding it helpful. See the join request. Okay, let's see if it's, Oh, I see that we have the questions. I don't see the join request, Amy. Let's see. So you have no requests. Maybe I have to go back. Oh, awesome. All right.
Success. Okay, so it doesn't work from a laptop.
Oh, all right. So I'm glad you figured it out.
I didn't
Hello
know.
there.
I didn't know. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? You look fabulous.
I mean, I'm trying to set it up on my phone, but like it's too low. I'm like this. Like, hang on, folks. Technical difficulties. I didn't know it didn't work from a laptop version.
I never knew you can even do lives from laptops, but now I guess we both know.
I like the big screen when I happen to be home, which is sometimes. Now I'm no, that's way too low. It's worse, not better. Stand by, folks. I swear
We'll figure it out.
At all things sex than I am at all things tech.
Well, I think, Amy, right now, I think it's perfect, isn't it?
How is that? Can you see me?
It's perfect. I can see you. The layout is gorgeous.
Oh,
how are you doing?
I mean, New York apartments are small, but I have a couple of homes, and this one is small, but I try to make it pretty because I think beautiful spaces kind of make you feel good, right?
Absolutely. I love that. And I like the kind of layout and everything. So, Amy, tell us about yourself for our audience that they don't know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, all the wonderful things that you're doing.
I mean, I've done a lot of things in my life on Earth so far. I fully intend on continuing, but I've been a model. I've been a pilot, both for work and for a hobby. Still am. I was briefly a scientist between undergraduate and graduate school. Didn't love it. Don't miss it. I'm an MBA. I helped take a very small oil drilling company public, which was super fun. I am an aunt and a sister and a dog mom. And the most interesting part and why I'm here is that I've been a sex worker.
That is so cool, like brain and beauty, right? You've done like so many cool things. And tell us a little bit about the sex work that you were doing. I know that the sex work is such a huge umbrella of activities.
This is a good point. So that word, you can, you guys, if you're interested, you can look up the history of why that phrase was co-opted. The attempt, in brief, was to try to get more legal rights, because whether you like sex work or you think we're all trash and you hate us, and look, I don't fault you. There's lots of problems. It's misunderstood. There are problems for sure, but it is here to stay. It's always been here to stay. It is a necessary part of the world, and I think it is often a really cool part of the world, even though sometimes it's not. But that's pretty much like every industry. There's problems in the medical and PhD business, and my dad's a professor. You talk about the nonsense there. So sex work was a term coined to try to get us a little bit more rights and respect, since we are part of society and we always have been. And for those of you who, you may not think you know a sex worker, but I guarantee that you do. They may just not have told you. We're everywhere. We're at Whole Foods, we're at yoga, we're your friends, we're your relatives, and we largely still live in the closet for lots of reasons. But because I was outed about a little over a decade ago, I lost the privilege of having privacy. And so that has cost me a lot, but the upside is that I can go ahead and speak out, and I fully intend on doing so, because I've already suffered the consequences of losing my closeted status, which I'll admit was nicer. I was treated better when people didn't know. But why did I become a sex worker? Well, initially there were obviously the issue of financial need. Otherwise, I guess I just would have been a slut, because I'm very sex positive. But
like the rest of us.
Well, I think it's a good way to be. Look, I was not raised in a family with shame. I have served a lot of clients who have shame. They are still human beings with the same biological needs, so they just lie a lot. Because you cannot legislate away Mother Nature. You cannot. Changing social norms, shaming and stigma. You can improve people's treatment of each other, but you cannot legislate away as strong of a drive as the drive to have physical contact and intimacy. It's vital. It's a good thing. It is neither a crime nor a sin. And in my opinion, the state does not own my body. I fuck who I want, when I want, for the reasons I want, as long as that other person is not being coerced or controlled, which I never have. They've always been quite willing. And I just think it's an issue of bodily autonomy. That said, I've heard all the arguments, everything you guys might say. Trafficking, yeah, sure, that's coerced labor, and there's a lot of trafficking in a lot of industries, and that's a problem, but that's a labor issue. If you cared about that, you would also care about trafficking in agriculture, in housekeeping, on shrimp boats. I mean, there is trafficked labor in garment industry, you name it. And the reason I know hysterical abolitionists are lying is because they don't care about any of that. They only care about sex. And they only care when it's women fucking. Because God forbid we should. As I said, I was raised in a family with no shame. My family taught me that I am as worthy of a full expression of a human life as any man. And as long as I'm not doing anything I don't want to do, I shouldn't, and I'm being safe and not catching diseases or having unwanted children or whatever, not doing things to my life that I don't want to happen, then I should not feel ashamed of enjoying my body, which I have, and I intend on continuing to do. I intend on arriving to my death exhausted, used up, and having had a lot of fun. And no one, no state, no government, no religious crazy person, no abolitionist is going to tell me that I am a victim, or that I don't know my own mind, or that I am not okay, because I know that I am. And I understand that some people disagree with my choices. Well, I may disagree with yours, but here's the beauty of it. You get to live your life and I get to live mine. Ain't that great?
Amen. I love it. And for our folks that are just joining us, we're going to have a full podcast interview. This is just like a pre teaser. And as you were saying all of these wonderful things, I was keeping a mental note because I feel there's so many great stories there
Yes,
that I can go
I've
deeper
got a
on
lot of
those.
funny ones, heartwarming ones, heartbreaking ones, some scary and bad ones, because sex work is in some places criminalized. It drives it
Mhm.
underground, and so you have a lot of the problems of the underground economy, organized crime,
Mhm.
things like that. I've been through some stuff, but that is all because of criminalization and the way America treats people like me. Those
Mhm.
things do not exist in New Zealand, barely in Australia, most of Europe. They do it much better in other
Mhm.
places, but we're not there yet. Maybe someday. I'm trying to do my little part. The more fun part though is the sex. I do like to fuck. The first time I did at 18 years old, I was like, this is for me. and and I've had a great time. Sex is, look, it's transcendent when you
Mhm.
make love to somebody that you're totally in love with, committed to, all that. But sports sex is okay too sometimes.
Mhm.
It doesn't always have to be rainbows and flower petals and a lot of people, I have lots of friends in open marriages and they are fine. They have to
Mhm.
do some lying because of the disgusting way that people judge and treat them, but they are fine, I promise you. Uh, and other people, that doesn't work for them, and that's
Mhm.
cool. So
Mhm.
for me, I mean, I would argue in terms of professionals in sex work, a lot of it is, life is not a level playing field. I've served people who are differently abled, who have no access to intimacy and dates. They will have none. Should they
Mhm.
live their lives lonely, depressed, and have no access? I say no. I've
Mhm.
served, um, yeah, people who are socially very awkward.
Mhm.
Dating is not easy for them. And I consider it an honor. Many of them I'm still friendly with. Some of them I've
Mhm.
still served here and there.
Mhm.
Long relationships. I have two clients I've seen for 18 years. I
Oh
mean,
wow,
it's,
that's longer than marriages.
right? And we get along better because we didn't have to live together. Uh, I'm sure I'm very annoying in large doses, but I'm very fun as a date. So that's probably the only reason we've liked each other as long as we have. And there is deep care there, even though yes, it is professional, and
Mhm.
that's possible. Ask any doctor. Many of them care deeply for their patients, and
Mhm.
yes, they're still doing it for a living because they need food and shelter like all of us.
Mhm.
Uh, so it is not true that it's abusive always, even hardly ever. I realized that I was at the privileged end. I was extremely high end, extremely low
Mhm.
volume. That is
Mhm.
true, and I can only speak from my experience in that edge of it. But my experience has been almost totally positive. Um, and again, I would argue that life is not a level playing field with people's access to intimacy. If you are
Mhm.
beautiful, sexy, and maybe young, or maybe not even that young, you do have a lot of access to offers of intimacy and physical touch. Not everyone does,
Mhm.
and it is a human need. I this abolitionist argument that particularly men should simply go without sexual contact, I reject that.
Mhm.
I see the effects of that in terms of depression and loneliness, and I reject that notion. I understand you can live longer without it than like water or
Mhm.
food, but
Mhm.
I think it is a human need. I don't think people are evil and entitled when they want physical intimacy. I do not
Mhm.
think that's a bad thing. I simply do not hate the human sex drive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and it can be healing, right? Like maybe you
Very
can
much.
have a life without sex, but the quality of life, if you're someone that want to have sex, then what quality of life you will have without that integral experience of pleasure?
Yes, the work you're doing to show people they can explore and have better sex and try things and they needn't be afraid because it's totally normal, guys, girls, all of us. It's normal. I mean, there's some search engine that shows real time terms that people are searching in porn, and it's
Oh.
very funny. Like, you can see in different areas of the world what people are looking at. Like, everything that you feel and want almost is pretty normal, people. you should not be ashamed of being a human being, and you shouldn't let anybody who's got their own issues make you feel that way. You know
I
who you
love
are.
that.
Don't let anybody tell you who you are. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about, so as you were talking about search engine, I remember one of the things you mentioned was like the request, like like a frequent request you were getting. I'm sure people are very curious about that. What are some of the kind of things that people are into when they kind of work with a sex worker, like more common ones?
So the polite men that I've actually let into my life simply introduce themselves wanting to take you on a date and meet you. And it's dinner, it's cocktails. What happens is between consenting adults, because that's the only way it's illegal, sometimes nothing happens. They don't even want to hug you. Sometimes they just like to, some guys are just rich and they like to have people around because they can.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they're looking for more. And if I've wanted to, I never did anything for money or because I felt like I had to. I did it because I wanted to. I'm a human. I like sex and I like men. And
Mm-hmm.
and I never felt coerced. And those things have sometimes I've been the freakier one because I pretty much, there's not a lot I don't like. I'm pretty freaky. But sometimes I've learned things. I've learned a lot about BDSM. I've been submissive and dominant. I'm a switch, and I like it all. I think it's fascinating. I've um I've learned about how much sometimes men do like a gentler, slower touch. They're not always like aggressive, wanting to. That does exist, but a lot of men are want sort of the touch that's more ascribed to femininity than you would think. And they sort of don't always articulate that well because they think it's not masculine. And I've considered
Mm-hmm.
it an honor to share moments with men that they don't even know how to ask for
Mm-hmm.
because it's not within the purview of being a man, right? There's a lot of performance anxiety with men. I mean, think about the words we use. We say they make women come.
Mm-hmm.
So they suffer a lot from insecurity and performance anxiety, whether or not they're any good and whether or not they're making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the doers, right? And that can be exhausting for men. Sometimes they want to receive and relax, and that's wonderful too. The requests can get very odd. Those are usually men who would, oh, in fact, always men who would never get near me. Sometimes they're trolls. I assume it's like a teenage boy in a basement somewhere, and then sometimes they are rude. For every 10,000 guys that call you beautiful, you only remember the one who calls you ugly, but who cares? That's the internet. Um, and yeah, a lot of uh, so I've known people who have very specific needs that are difficult for their spouse or their significant other to meet. Uh, foot fetishes, again, BDSM, role play. Sometimes people only feel more comfortable being super sexy if they are playing a role that's not them.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they are themselves, they don't feel safe and comfortable. But if they are a James Bond, or they are an animal, or a character like a vampire or werewolf, they feel freer to experience sexuality. And that's very common in people who like role play. I don't think I'm the best actress, but I've done a lot of role play, and I like it. It's funny. I sometimes it's hard to get into character, but I'm cool with it. I like the learning. I like the variety of it all. When
I
people
love
are
that.
rude, they say, I get 1,000 emails a week that are like, "Yeah, bitch, I want to hurt you," and that's just some idiot. If it's really threatening, I do report them to law enforcement. But for the most part, the those aren't serious requests. Those are just people being, you know, idiots online.
Well, Amy, you brought up so many great points, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight is like sometimes people with role play, they just don't even care about what you do. It's more about them giving themselves permission that okay, I want to kind of be my sexy self, and if I'm in this role, then I'm more willing. Go ahead.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. It's a permission thing. It does tend to be people who maybe grew up with negative messaging about sex, or they're kind of socially shy, like don't feel as at liberty to get freaky, being Jeff. Jeff feels freakier if he's, you know, like I said, Count Dracula or whatever. I don't know why I keep going to Count Dracula, folks. I've actually never done that with anybody, but I would.
Sounds sexy though.
Whatever. It's Halloween. Maybe that's why it's on my mind. Yes, you're correct. It's a permission thing, and there is so much stigma and shame around sex, and there's so many lies. When we marry somebody, we're under this idiotic delusion that we're both gonna like all the same things, that we're both gonna want to fuck at the same time in the same mood. I talked to a wife once. She was pretty mad at me for a while. She calmed down and then laughed about it all finally, which was healing. But she said that one of the reasons she didn't enjoy sleeping with her husband was that her favorite time to have sex was like really early in the morning, like dawn. That's when she was the horniest. And this gentleman, I knew him, his body, when he woke up at 5 a.m., his biggest need was to take a shit. I'm sorry to be vulgar, but that's the truth, and that's the words he used, and it was very funny to me. So he said, when I told him this, I was like, because he was like, why doesn't she ever want it? And I was like, well, you have a biological problem. The time of day, so you should get up and do your thing and then come back to bed and make love because she's ready. And he's like, oh, well, that's not what I want. And I said, well, that sucks. That's heartbreaking that you guys are just wired differently. And ideally, if you love somebody, you've dealt with couples, some compromise is necessary. But the reason sex work is so popular is that it's on demand. Many men have said, look, I can have physical intimacy when I'm ready, when I want it. I don't have to take a woman out for a steak and light candles and flower petals on the bed. And they don't hate doing that stuff. But the truth is, a lot of men sometimes are like, I deserve to have intimacy when I want it. Because for women, especially if you're beautiful like you can get laid anytime you want, right? So can I. I can have sex anytime I want. And that is not true for most men. And that makes sex work very popular because it's one of the few times in their lives that they get to choose. Guys who like brothels and they love the lineup, it's thrilling to them to have choice because that's not something men almost ever have. Unless they're, you know, an NFL linebacker who's gorgeous, but there's like five.
I'm confident.
Yeah, right. And rich and everything else. I mean, most life, as I said, is not a level playing field. And sex work as a market exists because there's demand. And I don't think that demand is always a bad thing. I know governments do. I know they've decided that this is just a bad thing. And I disagree vehemently with that in many cases.
I agree with you. I think like the image that people have about sex work is like mostly people were trafficked, right? And you're right, trafficking, it comes from different, like it can be a domestic worker, I mean, traffic, child trafficking, there are all sorts of things. But I think it can be a very healing gift that you give someone. Like people were asking about treatments of different sexual dysfunction and the comments, I was looking at that. And I know many of my clients, they got healed through the performance anxiety they had, ejaculation issue they had when they were working with a sex worker, because that feels like more of a non-judgmental, safe relationship. And for so many people, it's a relationship.
You're exactly right. I have been the practice date for many men who, some of them, a few were wealthy children of immigrants that came for like university. So they're young, they didn't speak English that well, they have money. They want to learn to date in America, but it's culturally different. They're not doing well with women. They're at, you know, UCLA studying engineering or whatever it is. And they do a practice run with us. And you're correct. The confidence that it builds, then they go out and they go, oh, okay, pretty woman. That's not an alien. It's just a pretty woman. I've met pretty women before. It's not, it doesn't scare me so much. That's correct. And yes, sexual dysfunction, I've seen that too. Absolutely, it's healing for many people, and it is often one of the few ways they get intimacy. That's true. And the best sex workers are the healing ones. There's many like that are very kind of, they're very, like, they're like fairies. They're just healing kind of souls. And they are always the nicest, most open-hearted. I've worked with a couple of them, and they are just beautiful souls to be around. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this was a preview of the conversation we will have. Like there's so many things I want to ask Amy more on the full interview. And if you guys have questions, either put it on a comment or DM us, DM me. And so I'm compiling the questions. So I'll go more in depth on a few of the things that Amy mentioned. And I loved having this conversation. You're a beautiful soul, and you're kind of filled with lots of great information. Before we close, where can people find you, Amy?
Yeah, you guys come back and let's talk. We're going to do the full episode. I'd love to talk to you guys. I'm here to demystify. I'm just a person. That's what we are. It's not, we're not unhuman. So I hope you come back. I'm at Amy Taylor NYC on pretty much all the socials. You can come say hi. And I really appreciate you guys sharing some time and attention. Every time you humanize somebody in my world, I mean it, you save lives, because people then they think that we're less of throwaway people and that we're not worthy of being hurt or even killed. So humanizing us and watching this is really important. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for taking time having this conversation. Guys, stay tuned. We'll be back with a full episode. Bye there.